Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to the Open Door Show on this fantastic Saturday morning. The sun is shining almost undoubtedly everywhere in the entire country from top to bottom. That can't be bad, can it? So anyway, look, I'm here. My name's Richard Clapson, and I'm here with the other half of propertyCEO, Mr. Ian Child.
Good morning, everybody. Hope you're all well.
Hey, good stuff. Look, guys, great to have you here. And just in case this is your first time and looking down the list, there are a few names that I'm not familiar with. So I'm sure a few of you are here for the first time. What have you let yourself in for? Well, it's going to be non-stop Q&A, 45 minutes, all positive. So this is a positivity zone on this show. Whatever else happens, we're a glass half full kind of organization. And it's all set around the theme of business and property development. Isn't that right, Ian?
Certainly is. Richie and I run a company called propertyCEO, and our day job basically is training people how to become successful small-scale property developers. Of course, many people quite like the idea of developing property, but they often worry that it's going to be quite risky, quite complicated. So basically our job is to give them the support that they need and the training they need to be able to do it as safely and as successfully as possible. We also think that there's an amazing opportunity kind of just around the corner at the moment with the recession looming, and we think that's going to create a lot of opportunity for property developers, particularly small-scale property developers. So we wanted to help people find out all about it and to see if property development might be a good fit for them.
That's right. So, you know, lots happening in the world. None of us quite know. This week, several times I've been on webinars of people saying, what's your predictions? What's going to happen? None of us know, but one thing's for certain, the market's going to drop. But one thing is also for certain, and I'm absolutely confident about this. This is, certainly in my lifetime, and probably for many of you as well, this is the best opportunity ever to get into property development. It really is. All the circumstances that have come together at this time are unbelievable. They're nothing like 2008. The finance is there. The government are predicting that they're trying to do something about it. And actually, this is a great time. It was a great time in 2008 for property developers. It really is a great time now. And so, you know, we love doing this show. We love all you people on here, you wonderful property CEOs, part of our family. It's a good time. Anyway, so we're all about bringing guests on, giving predictions, giving advice, a bit of training. So please put your questions in the chat box, because obviously if we have no questions, as I always say, we have no show. So please put your questions in, and we have a guest on today. So we'll give her a little bit of a build up and announcement in the normal property CEO way in just a moment. But let's see who is online today. Quite a lot of you. I'm never going to mention all of you, but let's see who we have got on here. Okay, well, Yoko's on. Yoko, good morning to you. Ron, Rob, Jan. Hello, Jan, Roma, Gavin, Mr. Wonderful. Someone has put Mr. Wonderful in the box. Now, there are quite a few of our students that come on that think this is a humorous show and it's a bit of fun. It's not time for fun, you know, this is serious. And Mr. Wonderful, he thinks he doesn't, you know, we don't know who he is, but actually he is Simon. He is Simon G. Good morning, Simon G, Mr. Wonderful. And we had no doubt that that was you. Charlotte's on, VJ's on, M-Sale's on, Richard's on, Dan's on, George is on, Piggery Pete is on. Now, one of our guys, Bob, who thinks that we don't know who Piggery Pete is absolutely into converting barns. So Piggery Pete is his title this week. So there you go. All a bit of fun, isn't it? Mansour's on, Julian's on, Surinder's on, Ranjit from Property Investor News is on. And he says, good morning, you lovely people. Ranjit Singh from Property Investor News. Worth a read, that one. I tell you what, definitely worth a read. Not a lot of money and a huge amount of information and all the back catalogues and videos, all sorts of content going on there. Gerd's on. Good morning, Gerd. Jay's on. Jenny's on. Anthony's on. Edward's on. Good morning, Ed. Stebbs and Richard. Anil, Clive, Josh, Colin, Sammy, Will, Harjinder, Jackie, Karen, Mike, and many, many more. And who's put what in the chat box? There's a lovely comment in here to start with from Mansour. It takes about 10 minutes to read this out, but I love this comment. Mansour, you're a little star. Thank you. He says, being trained by propertyCEO, I give value to Open Door. Excellent. I am constantly working out feasibilities to get my hand at my first project, but so far my offers have been rejected, which gives me the confidence that I am at the right track. I do not miss any Open Door sessions. Excellent. Good. Excellent. I like that, because if you miss an Open Door session, we come around and put a horse's head in your bed, so you cannot miss any Open Door sessions. So he says, I don't miss any Open Door sessions. I've lost my place where he is. If I miss the live session, then I do a catch up with the recording. Guys, they're all on a YouTube channel, so if you do miss one, go back and pick it up from there. Information shared at this platform is valuable and specific. No BS, no fluff. That's what we do, isn't it, Mansour? Thank you, Richie and Ian and your team working at the background to offer us such a valuable platform. What do you mean the team? It's just Ian and I. The team, they don't do anything, Mansour. It's all about us. I don't see them getting up early on a Saturday morning to come and see you guys. All about us.
Thank you very much. That's very, very kind, isn't it? Very kind.
It is. Sorry, team. Anyway, who else says good morning? Gavin says good morning. Chaps, morning, chaps says, morning, guys, says Richard. Morning, gents, says Dan. He's a little bit more formal, isn't he? Anthony says, hello all. Morning, gents, says good. Morning, Richie and Ian with lots of smiley faces, says Yoko. That's my favourite. Well done, Yoko. Morning, A-team, says Edward. Oh, a lot of people are calling us the A-team. I think that's great. And Debs and Richard says, good morning, Richie, Ian and Ranjit. Oh, it's Ranjit's show as well now. Blimey, Ranjit, you've made it onto the panel. Oh, beautiful, busy morning. Rich is baking a cake and our bacon butties are in the garden. Now to our favourite Saturday hour show. I have a warm feeling come over me.
It's all food down there, isn't it, in your neck of the woods? I do like it. I just get hungry every time we do the Saturday morning show, don't you, for some reason?
Looks like Trish has just signed on. Morning, Trish, and morning, Clive. Welcome to the show. Anyway, who likes to guess? Can you see and hear us, by the way? I should have said this at the beginning. Give us a quick wave if you can see and hear us. Wouldn't that have been funny? Yes, you can. Wouldn't it have been funny if we've been going on for a few minutes and no one could have seen anything? Right, let's thank you for that, guys. Let's bring our guest on. Should we bring our guest on, Ian?
I think we should. I think we should.
So, you guys are all, George says good morning. Good morning, George. We wanted to bring on a guest on here, and you guys talked about interior design. So we thought, well, let's go a little bit different. Let's go interior design turned into a developer. So we've got on the show today a developer who had 20 years experience in interior design, which is great. I mean, at the end of the day, if I'm honest, I mean, they were rubbish at both. I mean, they're not very good as a developer and they're not very good at interior design. But they're a really nice person. And I think that's what's important. If someone's really nice, that's okay. So the only thing I'm thinking, guys, if you're asking any questions about interior design or being a developer, they probably won't know any answers. But let's give it a go and let's see if we can catch them out, because they're a really nice person. And that's the important thing, isn't it? That's what I think. So let's see if we can get hold of, unless she's signed off, she might not now come on.
Perish the thought, that might happen.
What do you think, Ian? Is she going to turn up?
Let's get her on. Let's get her on.
Excellent. So we have Jo Balston in today. So Jo, can you hear us? Are you there?
Hello, I'm here.
Excellent. Jo, can you turn your camera on for us? And let's see if we can see Jo. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There she is. Excellent. Jo, good morning.
Good morning.
Hey.
Jo, say good morning to the crowd.
Good morning, everybody. It's nothing like being caught out on a Saturday morning. I'm so glad I'm here.
Oh, you are, aren't you? Jo, did you like your build up? I like to encourage people to, I mean, I was saying some great things about you just before you come on.
Yeah, I did hear that. Yeah, really great. I'm glad I'm a nice person, but rubbish at everything else. So thank you.
Guys, hands up if you can see and hear Jo, please. Hands up if you can see and hear Jo. Yes, excellent, excellent. Now, joking aside, she is very good at interior design. I'm actually partially colourblind, so what would I know? It's far from me to criticise. Jo, can you just introduce yourself? Tell us a bit about what you do, what your company's about, and what you used to do.
Yeah, so I'm Jo Balston, and my business is New Light Property. It's relatively new business, but we're looking at specifically conversion of existing buildings, commercial buildings, over input into another use, potentially residential, but it kind of depends on the building and where it is. So this is, I'm in Hampshire, so we kind of look around that radius of about an hour's worth of travel in Hampshire for where we're looking for our buildings. We don't have one yet. We've looked at a few, we've put in a few offers, so we're kind of just champing at the bit to get on, really, and that's kind of where that is. And I specifically look at these types of buildings that involve a conversion for the reason that that's kind of where my background lies, and that's the thing I really enjoy. Because I've spent the last 20 years before making this transition as an interior designer, and an interior designer working on predominantly commercial type scale buildings. So I did a lot of I did some commercial stuff. I did public sector work. You know, I did quite a lot of schools, I did some museums, I did some historic conversions. So yeah, I've got quite a mixed bag in the background there, and it's kind of fed me into this journey of property.
Excellent, Jo. That's great. So interior design is more than just about scatter cushions.
It's more than just about scatter cushions.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, Jo, Anthony very formally says, "Morning, Jo." Do you want to say good morning to Anthony, because he actually put it into you?
Morning.
Excellent.
I think that's one of the big things about interior design. Actually, was a bit of a revelation for me at the time, because I think a lot of people do think that it's something you can do yourself, isn't it? We've all decorated at home. How difficult can it be? But actually, it's a bit of a secret weapon, I think, when it comes to development. So I look forward to hearing all about that. And we've got a question in from Jay. Actually, if we kick off with Jay, who asked, what trends does Jo believe are imperative moving forward within development to ensure units stand out and appeal to end consumers? What do you make of that one, Jo?
Yeah, well, it's been an interesting time, hasn't it? Because everyone's been stuck inside, and it's created this kind of pent up energy and the need to move. But I think that's reflective of how some of our buildings are and how we can do better. Now, you can do lots of things with interior design. You can trick the eye into deceiving what a space is, and you can do that with lighting, you can do that with colour. But actually, one of the key things that is kind of the bigger picture, but will really help you with kind of promoting the building, making it a really brilliant space, is to encourage this feeling of well-being in it. And one of the ways you can do that is with connectivity to outside. So that's about natural light coming into the building, your views out of the building, being able to glimpse the sky, being able to glimpse our natural surroundings. And there's a lot of research about this being really great for your well-being. It's also really, really great for your health, because you're connecting with the rhythms of the day and night, and the seasons, and all those things which help your natural rhythms and your sleep patterns. And it all comes down to this kind of well-being. So you might be thinking, well, what's this got to do with interior design? But it is important, because a lot of work that an interior designer does is look at how to plan a building out. And so if you're doing new buildings, it's a lot easier to have control over where window placements go and the size of them, and making the most of the views and all those things. If you're converting an existing building and trying to use what's there and trying to use the infrastructure that's there already, that's more challenging. But certainly, if you can find ways of getting people access to the outside, then I think that's really going to help when you're promoting the building. So this could be about windows, it could be about access to kind of balconies, or cutting away a building so that you bring some sort of little courtyards into it. And all of those things are going to help with that feeling of well-being when you're in the building. And another thing that I think's quite interesting is that a lot of our houses have this kind of spare bedroom that is underused, often becomes a dumping ground. And there's also a lot of wasted space, I find, in development buildings, where there's obviously a pocket of space somewhere and it becomes like a massive airing cupboard or something that's useless. So maximising the space that you've got when you're doing your space planning, I think, is really, really important. Part of that can be about creating storage, but more importantly, I think now it's about creating something that could become a permanent office in a building. I think up until now, people have thought, well, we've got a spare bedroom, we'll just use it as an office and we'll share it with the kids, and it can be part and part playroom, part and part office. But I think if you can provide dedicated space for that somewhere in a building, that will be really appealing for people who are thinking that going forward they're going to need to work from home, even if it's part of the time. And that's not just about providing a space and then being able to provide some furniture. It's also about making sure that your building has the infrastructure to support that. So you've got sockets placed properly around the rooms. Maybe they've got USB connectors in them, and you've got good Wi-Fi connection in the building, and all of those things that would really sell, I think.
Fantastic. Thanks, Joe. Jay, hopefully that answered your question.
So Joe's talking about windows and light and access to seeing what the day does, and I'm sat here in a completely enclosed studio with not a single window. That's great. So I'm going to have sick building syndrome by the time I've left. Stuart's joined us, and Stuart says loud shirts. I'm assuming that's a compliment for my dress sense this morning. Morning, Stuart.
We did notice actually that you've been ringing the changes, been venturing out, doing a bit of shopping maybe.
I did that because Stuart's coming on. Stuart's one of my most valued friends for life. Stuart, it's good. Stuart, good morning to you from Essex. All right, Joe, we've got another question here from Chris. So Chris says, I'm thinking of developing some basic one-bed flats. Do you think interior design is important for these types of projects?
The answer is yes, I do, because I think that people have aspirations of where they want to live, regardless of whether they're going to be buying a £2 million house in Chelsea or, you know, a one-bed flat somewhere. And with a one-bed flat, you may be looking at people who are entering the market and having their home the first time they've ever owned something. So of course they're going to have aspirations. And part of what you're doing with interior design is you need to think about this as a marketing tool, and it's about making sure that you are selling this wonderful product to the right person. So of course interior design is important. The other thing to just talk about here is that there's this perception that interior design is a really expensive thing and that it's going to involve lots of expensive designer kit, but that is not it at all. And actually an interior designer should be able to it's about sympathetic detailing. They should be able to sympathetically create details and select the right finishes that give you that feeling of quality without necessarily the exponential cost that people associate with a designer. So I do think it's worth it, very much so. And the other thing to just mention here is that if you're thinking, well, I don't really think I've got the budget in to do this with sort of smaller flats, then what you could do with an interior designer is to work with them on almost like a brand look that you can use to represent your business going forward, if that's the thing you're always going to be producing out of the back end, because you can almost create like a lookbook and it have your specification in it, so that every time you do a project you can go in and you know exactly, or your architect knows exactly what it is that you want. And so it's a bit of a front end cost in that sense, but going forward you have the benefit of it and it becomes the sort of branding thing. So I think that's quite strong.
Chris, hopefully that's answered your question. I love that. I love that idea of creating this consistent brand look. And certainly 3 schemes that we've done recently, we just run. I daren't let Joe have a look at it because he'd probably say we could have done a lot better. But actually, we did run the same theme throughout each building, and that does make it easy. Ron's just joined us. Good morning, Ron. Ian, have we got another question?
Yeah, I've got my usual question actually for you, Joe, which is what is it that developers often get wrong when they think about interior design? What are the big mistakes that they make?
Okay, so the first one that comes to mind is I see a lot of buildings go onto Rightmove or wherever, for instance, for sale, developer type buildings that are not staged. And I guess somebody might think, well, it's only a 1-bed flat, what's the point? But I really do think that there is a point, and it goes back to this idea that you're marketing to somebody. So you do want to think about the fact that most people can't understand spaces. They certainly can't translate a 2D drawing up into a 3D space, and often even with a photograph of a 3D space, they'll find it challenging to understand how furniture will fit in there and actually what that means for them. So by putting some furniture in, you're helping them to understand what they're getting, which, you know, is much more reassuring to somebody. And you're also selling this idea of a lifestyle, of course, which is the other thing to remember. So when you stage it, they get that feeling of oh yeah, this is going to be so cool. I can really imagine myself living here. And you create that feeling of, you know, they don't want to miss out, so they're likely to put an offer in quick, and also for the price that you want them to pay because they want to get their hands on it. So, you know, I think going into something and not actually staging it is not a good thing to do. If you're worried about the cost of staging, then why not think about doing it virtually instead, particularly with this period of time where people can't go and visit properties in the same way. You can easily do it by 3D rendering, or there are people who can use Photoshop to cleverly stage photographs if you have photographs of empty rooms. So there's really no excuse for not getting some sort of staging going on. And photographs like that, doctored photographs, that's a really cheap way of doing it, actually. Very clever. People do that very cleverly. So another thing that I think Ian touched on this earlier, I think people think this is a really fun thing to do. I'm going to get stuck in with some interior design. But what they forget is that you're not designing this place for yourself to live in. It's not a chance for you to have a little play with stuff that you can't really work out how to get into your house. And you need to really think about who it is you're aiming this at and getting it right for them. So that is something that an interior designer is very good at, understanding the client and what they need. And if you've done your research as a developer and you've gone to your friendly estate agent and said, right, this is what I'm putting into the market in this area, what do people look for, what do they ask for, and you've got that list and you can brief your designer with that, that's what they're going to be doing when they're coming up with a scheme for you. So it takes that sort of, it's not about being personal, it becomes very objective and very targeted for your ideal customer.
Fantastic.
I just want to say that just remember that when you look at a listing on Rightmove, I think this is it sort of illustrates the importance of getting this right. If you're flicking through listings, literally someone has 2 seconds to make a decision whether they like something enough to click into the listing. And if they like it enough and they click into it, then they'll take 10 seconds to decide whether it's worth pursuing. That's the time you've got to capture someone into your product, which is why this stuff's so important. And the other thing, Ian, is about engaging a designer early enough in the process. Right. I think there's a perception that an interior designer is there just to do staging at the end, and they'll get a call to say, oh, I've got something coming to the market in a couple of weeks, can you please fit it out? And that's not the role of a designer. So I just want to talk about that for a minute, because this is something I come across a lot. People don't understand what a designer does. A designer will be able to interpret the brief for you from the very start. They may be able to influence the space planning and layout of a building, and they often have a slightly different standpoint on it to an architect, because an interior designer is very much about how people use the spaces. It's kind of user-centric. Not that an architect doesn't think like that, but they have a lot of technical constraints to get right. So it's kind of like it complements that. So they're also then looking at how, things like whether the lighting's right in the space, whether there's, all the electrical sockets are right, positioned right for the functionality of it. And then, of course, they will be able to help you with specification and getting the right materials at the right price points, because that's very important. And obviously, the earlier in the build process that you can get someone involved with that, the more certainty you have on cost, and you won't be going into a contract with lots of provisional sums all over the place. You'll have more certainty that the things that you want, you can afford. And then they do the colours, of course, that's the bit we all know, that designers love colour, so they'll do the colour bit and then make it look nice. And then they'll stage it for you or suggest how you could do that. So there's a whole raft of information that you could get out of a designer to help you with your projects. But get them in really early, get them in as early as you can, because they can help you more if you do that. It's a wasted opportunity otherwise.
No, brilliant. Well, comprehensive answer, thank you. And I think one of the things that I like about what you said earlier was the fact that you learn from the engagement with an interior designer. So get them in on your first project, and then a lot of the benchmarks are set. You learn from that, and then you don't necessarily need to you can use those on your subsequent projects. So no, thank you, Jo, fantastic.
Okay, excellent. There's a couple of statements. Well, there's a statement here. First of all, Edward says, really annoys me when people love the houses you sell, but say their wardrobe or sofa won't fit. So that's, I guess, a pretty frustrating thing. I'm certain that's probably one of the things an interior designer helps to resolve and sort out. Jo, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely, because I would always be looking at that kind of stuff, particularly if you know you've got to put some furniture in it to actually go to market. You've got to make sure it's right, because that would be incredibly frustrating for someone to buy something and then find that the furniture won't fit into it. And that's what I mean about this thing about people not being able to understand spaces. So the more you can help them with that, the better.
Brilliant.
And also, don't be tempted to make spaces really, really tiny. That's the other thing. You know, this idea of maximizing space. As developers, obviously, we're always looking at how much it's going to cost us to do this, and you want to maximize the potential of your development that you have. But the spaces also have to work for people. They have to be able to get a bed upstairs in the building. So, you know, things like that. It's really important. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to move in. It's basic, isn't it?
Yeah, good point. Good point. Anthony put a question in, but you've already answered that one with Ian's question that you've answered. Because Anthony said, what is the right time to engage an interior designer for development or refurbishment projects? So you've answered that one, which is great. Mansour's asked a question. I think I know the answer to this one, Jo, but you ought to clarify this for everyone. He says, hello, Jo. Do you also offer the standard architectural services, drawings, etc., plus project management? Would you want to just break the news of what you do or don't do in interior design now, Jo?
Oh, well, that's nice. Well, I'm not really touting for interior design work these days, I have to say. I do interior design stuff for my own projects, but I don't really do it for other people. Yeah, damn it.
He was going so well.
But actually, it does kind of bring me on to a point. If you find someone who you want to work with as an interior designer, a really nice way for them to work is in a supportive role with an architect. And often architects will say that they don't feel as confident in, or as comfortable in picking interior finishes and specifications and stuff. And they'd be much happier if they could delegate that off. But often they don't have the resource to do that. So they'll do it themselves, and they'll kind of do it because they have to. So if you can link a designer with an architect quite closely and get them working together, architect will do all the drawings. Designer just has to fill the holes with the spec. And that's kind of a good way of keeping the costs down. Designer might want more hands-on activity than that. They might want to do all the drawings and stuff, but they might not need to do that if you can link them quite closely with the architect. So, yeah.
Well, there you go, Mansour. Alas, you will not be able to use Jo. And he says thank you, by the way. He says thank you. Ian, have we got another question for Jo?
We've got one in from Stephen, who asks, Jo, how would you be able to tell a good interior designer from a bad one? What should you do to find a good one?
Well, definitely have a look at their previous projects and what their specialisms are, because designers are like any other specialist consultant that you would have on a development project. They will have areas of interest that they're good at. If you're putting out one-bedroom flats, you probably don't want the designer that's had lots of experience doing multi-million-pound houses in the middle of London. There's probably going to be a bit of a misalignment with what you're trying to achieve. But the other thing is to look for somebody who has that experience of doing the whole scope of the project, even if you don't need it, because you will get people who do staging, but that's what they do. They literally do staging. And you might get people who are more about soft furnishings, but I would advise you to look for somebody who has experience in the space planning and all of that technical stuff that comes before the pretty stuff. I would definitely go and ask them for examples of previous work. Yeah, definitely, and then see if you can get referrals from other people who have used them and see how they work. You might even be able to ask an architect for that kind of info. They might have someone that they know as well that they use to help them with stuff. So there's another route that you could try.
Yeah, and that way you know that your design team get on.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've worked together before. No, fantastic. Stephen, hopefully that answered your question. Rich, we've got another one.
Yeah, well, we've got a statement in, first of all, from Dan. Dan says, couldn't agree more. We invited a company in to stage our properties at an early stage, and they had some great ideas to assist with making the most out of the space and the design, and dress the properties in line with the market we wanted to appeal to. They look great and certainly worth the early investment. So there you are. There's a developer, I think there, Dan, on board today who says well worth doing. I think we've answered both of these questions, but there's a part I think we can bring in. So Charlotte asked the question earlier, which is similar to Stephen's, and she says, what is the best way of finding a good interior designer? So we partly answered that one. And Raj has also said, good morning, A-Team and Joe. So Joe, you're with the A-Team. We like that. And Joe could be in the A-Team one day. Fantastic education. There is more than it's a bish, bash, bosh style of decorating. I love that. And his question goes on to say, and I like this one about finding, he says, is there an association of designers or directory where one could reach out to these amazing people? So is there a directory or association, Joe?
Yeah, the BIID, British.
Can you say that again?
British Institute of Interior Designers, BIID. It's a good place to start for sure, and I think there is a directory in there. And I think you'll find people are in that directory. It's not quite the same as architects. They don't have to be, there's no kind of formal qualification for this. But what you will find if they're in that directory as a starting point is that they will have appropriate insurance, PPI insurance for doing works, which they kind of want. And they have been accredited by that association to work. So they've been through some sort of vetting process, but equally there will be people that, you know, are working and aren't in that service, so don't in that accredited body, so don't rule them out if they're not in there. Yeah, but that's a good place to start.
Okay, Raj, Charlotte, hopefully that answers your question. Ian, what have we got next?
I've got a question in from Helen, who asks whether lighting is that part of an interior designer's role?
Good question.
Yeah, I would say definitely. Lighting is so important because I was talking earlier about getting natural light in, but it's not always possible in all spaces to have amazing natural light. And how a room feels with lighting is incredibly important. And creating ambience and mood, you know, for the right spaces. And also, so that's also about where lighting's positioned. And I think we're very familiar with going in and seeing grids of spotlights everywhere. I would argue that grids of spotlights are pretty soulless. And there are much more subtle ways that you can get lighting in that will really lift something if you're struggling with a small space, like in a kitchen. If it's small and tight, you know, under pelmet lighting can really help that. But yeah, so definitely a designer can help with lighting for sure.
Fantastic, thank you, Helen. Hopefully that's answered your question. I'm sure it has.
And if it hasn't, Helen, that's the best we can do today. So there we go. You have to go to that association and get someone much better. Question from Colin. So Colin's changing the tack here. Colin says, you said you're now a developer and you don't do interior design. Do you have, oh, this is interesting. Do you have any regrets about getting into property development, and how hard is it to do? I'm thinking about it, and I'm a landlord at the moment with a small buy-to-let portfolio, but would like to make more money. So there's a few questions there. Do you have any regrets about getting into property development? How hard is it? And I'm guessing what Colin's saying, you know, could he go and do it? He's a landlord with a buy-to-let portfolio. What do you think, Joe?
Do I have any regrets? No, I don't. Absolutely don't have any regrets. I think if you get to the point in what you're doing in your life where you feel that you need a change, then you should absolutely change it. It's, you know, life's too short to sit there doing something that you feel frustrated with. So absolutely don't regret that. Anybody could do it, I think, but I think it really helps to have some knowledge behind you. I certainly wouldn't go in half-cocked. I would get some knowledge behind you, decide what it is that you need to learn, or where your knowledge gaps are, and fill them. Because obviously with development you're talking about bigger sums of money, so that's, you know, there's more to lose if you get it wrong. You don't want to do that. Get the right people around you, because the team of people around you that you'll need to do it are slightly different from if you've been doing kind of little house refurbs to create an HMO portfolio, which presumably is what you've been doing. Sorry, what was the third part of that question? The middle part, I've forgotten.
Well, I sort of interpreted it because basically said, "Have you got any regrets and how hard is it?" And Colin says he's thinking about doing it. So, what advice would you give Colin?
How hard is it? So I think I mentioned at the beginning of this that my business is relatively new, and I've come through. Some could argue it's been rubbish timing, but some might argue it's been great timing because it's bang in the middle of a pandemic. And so we're coming into a period where there's lots of opportunity, but up until this point, it's been quite hard and frustrating because there hasn't been a lot going on. So maybe I'm not the best person to ask about that at this moment. But I feel that because I've had some education, Richie and Ian have been part of that for me, and I've got a great team around me. I've got some finance lined up because we're working with investors, so that's great. That we're good to go when we can find something. So it's a question of getting the right property in now, and there's lots of viewing going on and gearing up to do that. So yeah, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do because otherwise everybody would be doing it, but there's no reason why you can't if it's what you want to do.
Colin, hopefully that encourages you and helps you. I laughed and I chuckled to myself because Jo said, I don't know if you picked up on it, Ian, she said, yeah, I've had some education from Ian and Richie and I've got a great team around me. She never said the education was great. Do you notice that?
I think that's misinterpreted what I said, but anyway.
Yeah. Ian, what we got next?
Hear what you want to hear, don't you?
Yeah. Have you got another question, Ian? Or?
Yeah, well, on the development side, again, so this is from, who's this from? This is from Jules. Where, as a new developer, do you think the next opportunities are going to come from?
Oh,
no
good
pressure.
question, Jules.
And
we're going to write this down as well.
Boys.
Well, there's a lot of interesting stuff happening at the moment, and I'm sitting here like everybody else waiting to see what happens in this planning white paper when it comes out and what implications that has. But so for my business, what I'm looking for at the moment are things that give us mitigated routes to planning. So we're looking for permitted development stuff. So for me, that's offices, and that might be shops with uppers, both of which I think are going to be quite interesting coming forward. When people decide that they don't need to be working as much as they have been in offices, maybe they want to downscale them, there'll be offices coming to the market. And obviously we all know that a lot of shops are finding it very difficult and are going to be finding it difficult going forward and may well be giving up their units. So those are the two areas for me that fit in with what I want to do anyway, but thankfully seem to be coming into a bit of an opportunity area at the moment.
Fantastic. No, excellent. Hope that answered your question, Jules. And of course, watch this space as that white paper. As soon as that white paper's out, we'll be updating everybody on what's in it. And I'm sure there's going to be quite a lot of opportunities for developers in it.
I think, Rob, we've answered your question because Rob's put a question about development. He said, what sort of development projects do you work on, Jo? Well, I think Jo's talked about office conversions and shops and uppers and PD. But another one here on developments is that they picked up on this theme here, Jo. But Josh has said, what are your views on the potential recession and how that will affect property developers? Maybe you could put a bit of comment on how you as a relatively new developer see the recession and what effect it's going to have on you.
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a watch and see situation at the moment, isn't it? Because we just don't really know. So the way that I've been working on it at the moment is if I'm putting costs together, it's quite difficult to understand the values that things might have currently. So I wouldn't be able to do the usual due diligence on that we would normally do, because the potential in a couple of months' time costs of the outcome units might be different to what they were pre-pandemic. So I've been downgrading the GDVs a little bit to compensate for that, so that when I get a figure out of the other end, it's a bit more realistic, maybe for the immediate gap after this. But when we're looking at a development, I'm probably looking at something that's 12 to 18 months forward if I took on something now. And I think I'm hoping that there'll be quite a quick bounce back. So, you know, I'm taking those mitigated routes now, but maybe when we get there, it will be okay and I won't have needed them. There seems to be money still. People are willing to lend. I said, you know, we work with investors, but there's been no issue with lining up that. So for me, that's a great reassurance, because obviously that's a huge hurdle if you suddenly find you can't get lending on a development, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Yeah, and then I guess it's about the output that you're putting out, so that the units you're putting out, and just I talked about it earlier, you know, the things that you can do to make them appeal into a kind of emerging market. And okay. Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
So, Josh, it sounds like Jo is confident and sees the opportunity. Ian, what have we got as a last question? See if we can get one more in.
Okay, last one. Let's pick a good one. So this one goes back to interior design, which is from Jonah. If there was one simple tip that you could give that always gets great results, what would that be?
Oh,
Jo, no pressure, but this is the last question, and this is the one big tip that everyone's going to take away and remember you by.
Okay, that's quite hard. So one thing that I think
Jo,
that
I've got it.
Yep.
Scatter cushions.
No. Don't talk to me about those. Something that I always do when I do an interior design scheme, which I think is a fundamental to get right, it's pretty simple, is to think about the whole palette through your building as you're working. Okay, so you don't want little rooms of interest going on. Just keep the palette one thing through the whole building, simple, as few finishes and colors as you can. Color skirtings in with the walls so that the space looks maximized. I just think that's the best thing. As few floor thresholds as you need, so transitions between finishes on flooring, I think keep those to a minimum. Just keep it simple. Keep it simple. It makes a huge difference to how a space feels in terms of volume. And also,
one color palette, keep it simple. That's my kind of color. Jonah, hopefully that answers your question. Guys, we've pretty much run out of time. As always, we're just a couple of minutes. We're going to be going over wrapping up the show. Jo, thank you very much. Obviously, Jo said that she doesn't do interior design. She does run a development company. Jo, if people want to reach out to you or check out your website, which is a fantastic website, and see what you're up to, and maybe connect up and buy you a coffee and a piece of cake, what are your details, Jo?
So my website is newlightproperty.co.uk. Or you can email me on hello@newlightproperty.co.uk.
Excellent. Do you want to say that one more time?
Newlightproperty.co.uk or hello@newlightproperty.co.uk.
Very friendly. Excellent. Jo, thanks for coming on. Jo, there's a couple of nice comments in here. Jo, thank you for making us aware of this important area of development which is overlooked. It's appreciated. A-team, what a wonderful way to start your Saturday. Thank you both. And Gavin said, thanks, chaps. Brilliant to see Jo again. So you must have met Gavin in the past. Some didn't. I don't know when that would have been. He says, thanks for bringing her on. Some really useful content today. And Trish says, thank you very much, Jo. That was really interesting. Jo, thank you very much. Lots of information. As always, we'd like to see whether people would like you to come back again. Hands up if you'd like us to get Jo back at another time. There's one hand gone up, Jo, so we'll see what we can do. Just one hand.
That's
me. I pressed it by mistake. Jo, thank you for coming on. Much appreciated. Will you come back again and come back and see us, and maybe we'll talk a bit more about development next time?
Yeah, of course, I'd love to. Yeah.
Excellent. Jo, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
Thanks, Jo.
Bye.
Yeah, I told you she'd be rubbish. I told you, didn't I? I said that was a complete waste of time.
Well, I know that you invest quite heavily in your own interior design activities as one of the few colorblind interior designers in the country, actually. So, yeah, I think it was very magnanimous of you to have another interior design expert on. So good for you.
I did up the studio. It's ever so simple. It was ever so simple.
And
Guys, there's some lovely comments coming in here. Thank you, Joe. Really interesting indeed. Yes, please bring her back, says Yoko. Guys, just whilst you're all on, before you disappear, Ranjit does this for us occasionally, which is really good. Ranjit, thank you. Free complimentary property investor news magazine for all property CEOs. So if you're a property CEO, which by default you are because you're here on our show, you can get a free copy. I don't think there's a catch, knowing Ranjit and Richard, the Property Investor News, there will not be. So basically, all you've got to do is send your name, postal address, and a telephone number, and the event attended, open door. 2, write this down, guys. Grab a pen and paper. This is a free copy of Property Investor News. Ranjit, which is RANJIT, Ranjit at property-investor-news.com. So that's Ranjit, RANJIT at property-investor-news.com. And Ranjit will send you a free copy of a magazine. You don't get much for free in this life, I can tell you. Not normally anyway. So Ranjit, thank you for that. It's much appreciated. Ian, any final comments before we wrap up today's show?
No, I need to reinforce probably just maybe 2 or 3 points from what Joe was saying in interior design. I think one of the things that really resonated was when she was talking about the kind of, I guess, the dwell time. So when people are looking at properties and they make that decision as to whether they're going to click on yours in the space of 2 seconds. So how important is that to be able to kind of maximize that really small opportunity? But I think the other thing that's quite interesting is that what interior design enables you to do quite often is sell units more quickly. So of course it could increase the value, but it could certainly got a great opportunity of selling things more quickly, and that saves you money. So yeah, it's all good news. And I would say, yeah, get an interior designer in, or get a discussion going with an interior designer on your first project, and you'll be, you'll learn a lot. I'm sure you'll learn a lot.
One of our students, Richard, has put bumpy whites, question mark. I'm a big fan of what's called bumpy white tiles. They're cheap as chips, and I'm a bit of a crude developer in some ways. But yeah, Richard, yeah, bumpy whites, that's the answer. Guys, that's it for this episode of Open Door. We really hope you've enjoyed it. We hope it's kickstarted your Saturday morning for you. As always, if you've got any friends that we don't have, so please bring some friends along. If you think they're going to enjoy this, we'd love to keep growing this community of our CEOs. It would be fantastic. And please, of course, feel free to share us on social media. We have a closed Facebook group if you would like to join that. It's called Business Owners because it's all about business. Business owners creating wealth through property development. And please connect with us on Facebook if you'd like to come and join that group. We're back again on Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock. Other than that, please pop in the chat box if you've enjoyed the show. We always love to see these final comments. And if you've enjoyed the show, it's great. If there's no comments in there, we'll go away sad for the rest of our Saturday. So let's just see who's put any comments. Oh, not one person. Yeah, Mr. Wonderful, Simon G, has put a clapping hand. So he said, thank you very much. Jonah says, thank you. What a fantastic show. What else we got down here? Rob says, great Saturday. Always good to start my day like that. Thank you, guys. Very informative about interior design, says Anthony. What else we got? Oh, it's going in as quick as anything. Charlotte says, good content again. Thanks for giving up your Saturday M. Charlotte, pleasure. As long as you're here, we will turn up. Not just you, Charlotte, but obviously everyone else. Yoko says, we enjoyed it. Yes, we enjoyed it. She says, smiley face, clapping hands, thanks for hosting. Another great show by the A-Team Property CEO. And Piggery Pete, that's the Bob who does Barnes in Birmingham, has said, oink, oink, brilliant show. Don't be sad, enjoyed it. Very interesting, as I'm about to sell a flat, hopefully. Jan, go for it, go sell that flat and enjoy the rest of your weekend. And Surinder, final comment, good session, thank you. Can you please confirm the Facebook group? Oh my God, I was about to finish. Business owners creating wealth through property. Just type me in on Facebook and I'll connect you up. Guys, have a great Saturday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. See you Tuesday evening.
Take care, bye.